A few minutes before midnight on February 28, 2026, the skies above the Middle East changed forever. Radar stations began detecting unusual aircraft movement. Air defense systems flickered to life across Iran. Then, almost simultaneously, explosions lit up multiple cities. Military installations, command centers, and missile facilities were struck in rapid succession. Within minutes, the world realized something extraordinary had happened. The United States and Israel had launched a coordinated military operation against Iran. This operation, described by Israeli officials as Operation Lion's Roar, marked one of the most significant military escalations in the Middle East in decades. But to understand why these strikes happened and what they mean for the future of global security, we need to rewind the story. For years, tensions between Iran and Israel had been building quietly but relentlessly. Israel accused Iran of developing nuclear weapons and expanding its network of allied militias across the region. Iran denied the accusations, insisting its nuclear program was peaceful. Meanwhile, the United States attempted diplomatic negotiations aimed at limiting Iran's nuclear capabilities. Those talks failed. By early 2026, intelligence agencies in Washington and Tel Aviv believed Iran was advancing its nuclear enrichment and missile programs faster than expected. For Israel, the threat was existential. For the United States, it was a strategic challenge that could reshape the balance of power in the Middle East. The result was a military decision that had been debated for years but never executed, until now. The opening hours of the operation were carefully planned. According to reports, waves of aircraft and precision-guided missiles struck targets across Iranian territory, including military facilities and missile infrastructure. Smoke rose above parts of Tehran as airspace across the region rapidly shut down. The goal was clear: weaken Iran's ability to launch missiles, disrupt its command structure, and cripple key elements of its military network. But wars rarely unfold according to plan. Within hours, Iran responded. Missiles and drones were launched toward Israeli territory and toward several American-linked military installations in the region. Air defense systems across the Middle East scrambled to intercept the incoming threats. Regional radar systems, U.S. bases, and defense networks suddenly became part of the battlefield. Iran also adopted an asymmetric strategy, one it has spent years perfecting. Instead of relying solely on large missile barrages, Iranian forces deployed swarms of relatively cheap drones capable of targeting radar installations and air defense systems. These strikes targeted key detection infrastructure in countries across the region, exposing vulnerabilities in sophisticated missile defense networks. The message was clear: even the most advanced defenses can be overwhelmed. Meanwhile, the scale of the conflict grew rapidly. Within days, hundreds of strikes had taken place across Iran. Monitoring groups reported that a significant portion of the attacks targeted security installations in western Iranian provinces, particularly areas with strategic military infrastructure. Casualty numbers also began rising quickly. Reports suggested that more than 1,000 people had been killed during the first phase of the conflict. And with every new strike, the geopolitical consequences became more complicated. Some governments quietly supported the operation, seeing Iran's military capabilities as a regional threat. Others strongly condemned it, warning that a wider regional war could erupt. International shipping companies began reconsidering routes through the Persian Gulf. Energy markets reacted nervously. Oil prices fluctuated as investors feared disruptions to supply lines. But perhaps the most important question was this: did the strikes achieve their strategic objective? Military analysts remain divided. Supporters of the operation argue that the strikes severely damaged Iran's military infrastructure and disrupted its missile networks. If true, that could delay Iran's ability to threaten Israel or American allies. However, other experts are more cautious. Some intelligence officials believe the strikes alone are unlikely to trigger political collapse or long-term strategic defeat for Iran. the country has spent decades building resilient military networks, underground facilities, and regional alliances that cannot be eliminated in a single campaign. In other words, the operation may have weakened Iran, but it may not have ended the conflict. And history supports this caution. The rivalry between Israel and Iran has evolved through years of covert operations, cyber warfare, targeted assassinations, and proxy conflicts stretching from Syria to Lebanon. Military strikes have occurred before, but none have escalated to this scale. That is why many analysts describe this moment as a turning point. Not simply a military confrontation, but the beginning of a new phase in the Middle East power struggle. Another critical factor is the broader international environment. The United States remains Israel's closest military ally, but its involvement carries global implications. Any sustained conflict could draw in regional actors, affect global energy markets, and reshape diplomatic alliances. And Iran is not without options. Beyond conventional missiles and drones, Tehran maintains relationships with armed groups across the region. These networks, from Lebanon to Iraq and beyond, give Iran the ability to extend the battlefield far beyond its own borders, which means the conflict may not stay contained. Even now, as strikes continue and retaliation unfolds, the long-term outcome remains uncertain. Will the campaign force Iran to reconsider its nuclear ambitions? Will it push the region toward wider war? Or will it simply deepen one of the most dangerous geopolitical rivalries of the modern era? For now, the skies over the Middle East remain tense, radar systems remain active, and military commanders remain on high alert. Because in modern warfare, the most important moment is often not the first strike, but what happens next.